Welcome to the Green Ball Show, a periodic chat show for Irish cricket fans. I'm Craig Easdown, and today we're looking at various aspects of cricket in Ireland. And today we're going to talk about covering Irish cricket from a media and broadcast perspective. So today I welcome three special guests. I'd like to say hello to Robin Walsh.
Greetings, Craig. Thank you for the invitation.
Say hello to Ger Siggins.
Morning, Craig.
And to Ian Callender.
Hi, Craig.
So we're going to start off by a bit of a get to know you. Now, for most Irish cricket fans, all three of you will be very familiar. But for those who aren't so familiar, I'll just go through a bit of background on each. So we'll start with Robin. Robin, I'm not going to do justice to your career at all here, but I'll give it a go. You have an extensive career in the media, including roles such as the news editor at BBC Northern Ireland in the 70s, the editor of BBC's 9 o'clock television news and current affairs programs, and you became the BBC Northern Ireland controller, cricket correspondent for Sunday Life. For a time, you did public relations for the Irish Cricket Union. You became the president of the Lord's Taverners in Northern Ireland, the inaugural chairman of the Cricket Writers of Ireland, and in 2013, you became the Cricket Ireland president. Does that capture it?
That more than does it justice. Thank you very much indeed, Craig. In fact, you leave very little, if anything, for me to add. save I cut my journalistic teeth in the town of Larne with the Larne Times, and in the town of Ballymena with the Ballymena Weekly Telegraph, now defunct. So I started in print journalism, graduated, if that's the right thing, into television, Ulster Television, and then the BBC, which you've captured excellently. Thank you.
Very good. And growing up in the Northwest, was journalism always your ambition?
Yes, my father and mother always avidly read newspapers, and I got the bug, yeah. We left Londonderry / Derry. We people who come from the city tend to call it Derry, when I was 15 and moved to Belfast. And I went to grammar school there, but had the notion of journalism and went to commercial school and learned a thing called typing and shorthand, and got myself a job, and wonderful career.
Now, professionally, sometimes things that don't go so well are more memorable than the things that do go well. Can you tell us what happened on the day of the famous day in 1969 when Ireland bowled West Indies out for 25?
How very nice of you to bring that. Really good of you. I was the news editor at Ulster Television. Ireland were to entertain the West Indies at a little Tyrone village called Sion Mills. I decided not to send to cover it, despite my avid interest in cricket. And there are very good reasons why I didn't send. It was an 80-mile drive to Sion Mills from Belfast in the pre-motorway days. So the cameraman would have only limited time at the game. Of course, as it turned out, that would have been enough. And by the time you edited and all of that, as I say, limited time at the match. And also, it was a single camera. And in those days, and not particularly brilliant, the cameraman, and they were all men at the time, would have known nothing about cricket, and the coverage would have been hopeless. Now, sadly, the BBC took possession of an outside broadcast unit with its big cameras and excellent coverage. And they decided that they would try out the outside broadcast unit the first time they'd used it. So they opened up the transmitter and they decided to cover this game. Anyway, be that as it may, I didn't even watch their coverage during the morning. And I switched on the radio news at lunchtime. And the newsroom, who was ever writing the bulletin, had no great news sense because it was the last item. And it read, "Now cricket." And in the one-day international at Sion Mills, Ireland have bowled out the West Indies for 25 runs. Now the weather forecast. Well, I goes down for my lunch. I'm called to the phone. And the voice at the other end said, "Oh, Robin, it's Ted Dutton here from the ITN News Desk." I said, "Ted, the answer is no." So no coverage. Now, I have to say, had the BBC not had the outside broadcast, they would not have sent either. Remember, next day or the day after, the West Indies were playing a 2-day game in the middle of Belfast. But anyway, the BBC's coverage was not fully recorded by the newsroom in Belfast, which is the reason why, to this day, there are only 7 of the 10 wickets in existence. But anyway, it's a day I would prefer to forget. But thank you very much for raising it, Craig.
And in 2013, Robin, you became Cricket Island president. What are your memories of that year and the matches you watched?
My greatest memory is of this little booklet, if you can see it, because I did a sort of a blog for the Cricket Ireland website, and Ger Siggins and his friends compiled this book, which is called Minds at Treble. And that is because as an associate country at the time, Ireland won the 3 global titles which they entered that year, i.e. the Intercontinental, the 50 and the 20. So it was a totally memorable year. 2 matches. If you want me to go on, I will tell you a little about the 2 matches which stick out in my mind. One was in September 2013, when Ireland entertained England at Malahide. Packed house, 11,000 people. Chief guest, the President of Ireland, Michael D. Higgins, whom I meet as he gets out of his car at Malahide, 2:15 on the dot. And he said to me, "Is there anything I need to know?" And I said, "Well, Mr. President, this morning, Ireland batted first and William Porterfield scored a century. And secondly, you're probably aware of the fact that the England captain is Owen Morgan, who hails from Dublin and was brought up playing cricket in this very ground." So in we went, and I introduced him to the 2 captains. First of all to William, and Michael D said to him, "Well played this morning." So we go down the line, and then we go to the English team. And I said to Owen, "Owen, have you met your president?" And the president said to him, "Welcome home, welcome home." And of course, it was a great match, and we all know what happened. Ireland were in the ascendancy, half-decent first innings, with Rankin, the Irishman, taking 4 wickets. But William getting his 100, set a decent target of whatever it was, 260 odd. England go out to bat, and Ireland take early wickets. But guess what? Young Owen Morgan scores a century and proceeds to win the match. And I remember turning to Michael D and saying, "Mr. President, wouldn't it be ironic if an Irishman won this game for England?" To which the president said, "You might call it ironic, I might have another word for it." Anyway, that was that game, and Michael D made that day for me. The other great game was, of course, in the same year when Ireland played the Netherlands for a place in the Women's T20 World Cup, which was to follow in Bangladesh. Ireland played the Netherlands for a 3rd place playoff, and what a match that was. And to cut a long story short, Ireland bat first, Isabel Joyce gets her 70 odd, Netherlands bat, looking for 126 or 127, something like that. Last over, the Netherlands need 12 runs to win. Laura Delaney is bowling the last over. 12 required, 8 off the first 5, 4 required. Guess what? A single Ireland are through to Bangladesh. I have never, ever seen so much emotion. Tears of joy from Ireland and serious tears of disappointment from the Netherlands. But those were the two memorable occasions in my presidency for which I was most honoured to be elected.
Now we're going to turn to Ger. Ger, you're born and bred in Dublin.
Yes, indeed.
Initially a sports journalist, you became the assistant editor of the Sunday Tribune. You've written extensively for many publications in Ireland and the UK and beyond for Cricinfo. And you're also a book author. Your Rugby Spirit series has sold over 50,000 copies at this stage, which is very good. In terms of cricket books, you've written numerous books on Irish cricket history particularly. Green Days from 1792 to 2005, The History of First-Class Cricket, and you co-authored Ireland's 100 Cricket Greats in 2006. You also, I note as well, wrote the renowned documentary Batmen, which was shortlisted for an Irish Film and Television Award. So quite an extensive broadcast and media career there. But before we talk about that, let's start with your own cricket career. Did you play much, and how would you, as a journalist, describe yourself as a cricketer?
Well, Robin said this isn't going to take very long, and he's probably right. I played a fair bit of casual cricket, but no, I didn't play it in school, and it was really only at college that I took it up actively, and I ran my own team for 20 years in the newspaper, which was more a participatory thing than competitive. It was a good way. I loved getting people out to play cricket. I loved giving them a chance to sample it. I always used to bring 4 or 5 beginners out every time we played a game, just to give them a taste of the game. So that was my cricket was mostly on a friendly level.
Very good. And were you a demon bowler, a swashbuckling batsman? What were you?
Yeah,
how would you describe yourself?
Probably. I got a decent off break worked out by the end of it all.
Yeah.
But it was very slow.
Right.
But I got a lot of wickets with it. It was, I think slow bowling is greatly underestimated.
Very good. And being a sports journalist by trade, was cricket always part of the brief, or did you get into cricket, or how did you get into covering cricket?
I think I always wanted to be a journalist, certainly from, before I became one. I had a plan to start writing in papers, but it was actually when I was about 1984. We were at a loose end for a summer, me and a couple of pals, and the Ireland West Indies game was coming up in Rathmines, and we always had a great interest in cricket, but we had been working on some college magazines at the time, and we decided for the summer that we'd set up a cricket fanzine. That's essentially what it was a fanzine, and we did it that summer. It was very well received. Got 3 or 4 issues out that summer and the following summer, and the Sunday Tribune were looking for somebody to write about cricket. Spotted this because I used to send them in copies every issue, and gave me a gig, which eventually became a job, and I eventually became sports editor.
Fantastic. As I mentioned, you've written various books, some kids' books, sports books. Being cricket circles, you co-authored obviously the cricket history books. Was cricket a history of a driver? Was history a driver to start with? You got into cricket history, or?
I suppose. I mean, I was a history student at college. That was what I did.
Right.
I've always had a passion for history, at every level. I think I was lucky that it was Trinity I went to, because Trinity has such an incredible history of the cricket club. It's it's one of the oldest clubs in the country. The ground itself is 200 years old this year since they started playing cricket. So I think I got sort of soaked up a lot of the lore and the stories about that club, and then just developed an interest from there. And I love talking about history to people and reading about it. And you'll always know me at a ground because I generally zoom in on the oldest person there. I always try and sit down beside an old codger and ask him about his stories or her stories of his or her cricket career. And people love talking about them. So yeah, you pick up a lot of stuff there.
And on to Ian. Ian, you might be able to lay claim to be the most experienced cricket journalist currently on the beat. I believe 587 international matches across 21 countries you've seen. Is that right?
That's apparently right, yes.
So your experience in journalism obviously started with Sunday News, a newsletter. Sunday Times, the Irish Daily Mail, Sunday Life, and probably what most people these days know you for is the Belfast Telegraph. You're also Ireland correspondent for Wisden Cricket Monthly. And somewhere in your spare time, you cover club cricket and Northern Ireland football as well. But before we get into that, similar question to what I asked Ger. How was your cricket career?
This will take even shorter than Ger. Second 11 with Academy was my heights for a couple of years before I turned to watching and reporting on senior cricket. I always actually preferred watching cricket than playing, believe it or not. I was always the first to volunteer to score or volunteer to umpire, so it wasn't a great burden having to join the journalist ranks, which and as for a 4-day, I wouldn't say it was a 4-day, but I do remember taking 5 wickets in one match for Academy Seconds in Lurgan Park. So that was the highlight of my playing career.
Very good. And you not only, as I said, you're not only a cricket journalist, but also write about football. But how did you make your way into sports journalism?
I was at college doing a journalism pre-entry course. I got Saturday shifts in the now defunct Sunday News. I was given a football match to report, Distillery against Glenavon, when they, never forget it, when the Whites were playing their home matches at Seaview, the Crusaders ground. Must have done all right because I've been reporting Irish League football games ever since.
Right.
And I'm not sure whether you mentioned, but I was secretary of the Northern Ireland Football Writers Association for 32 years as well. So
Fantastic.
that should take some beating.
Yes. And of the 587 international matches you've covered for Ireland in cricket, do you remember your first game you covered?
Barely remember my last game, so no, actually I don't remember my first. My list of games tells me it was Ireland versus Canada at the old Ormo ground, which was actually coincided with the debut of future Ireland captain Stephen Wark and Paul Jackson. It rained and was no result, so nothing new there. I do remember my first away game, the NatWest Trophy game against Northants at the county ground. And I always tell the story against myself of Alf Masood. It was only his second match for Ireland. And as the visiting journalist was asked by the locals to tell them something about Alf, you know, what could they expect? I said he was the former Pakistan fast bowler. So imagine my surprise when they came out to bat at number 5 and looked pretty good. I was actually talking about Asif Masood. So that wasn't the greatest start to my journalist career. So that's my earliest memory of cricket reporting.
Very good. That's fantastic. Now we'll move on to quickfire round with some quickfire questions and quickfire answers. We'll start with the first question. What's your favourite Irish cricket ground? Joe.
College Park. College Park in Trinity. Hard to beat.
Surprise.
It's a fantastic place to watch a game, fantastic place to play a game. It's just so much history, so much atmosphere, and well, there's a good crowd in, which happens quite a lot because most of them don't know what they're even looking at. But it's still that's a fantastic place to go. Magic.
Very good. Ian.
I'm going for the Castle grounds, which probably not too many people will know outside the NCU. It's my old school ground with the most magnificent view of Belfast Lough.
Oh, very nice. And Robin?
Got a 50 at Castle grounds for Inst against BRA, but my favourite ground is Downpatrick, because
nice.
I tend to associate grounds with people, and that was the home of the late Alfie Lenihan.
Frozen for me.
The cricket, the Irish cricketers once were known as the Gentlemen of Ireland. Alfie was a true gentleman of Ireland who died last year. So that's my favourite ground.
What's the cricket ground with the best media facilities you've come across around the world? Sure.
Ooh, it's very hard to beat Lords. Definitely, yeah. Lords is a fantastic place to work, and the ground, because you're behind a screen or behind glass, it's not ideal, but certainly in terms of facilities and the way they look after you, it's brilliant. In Ireland, we're pretty well looked after. Well, certainly with international games, we're we got a decent. We're well looked after. Club wise, I think the Hills really push the boat out when you go and see a game there. Yep. They really look after you well. Yeah, probably the Hills in terms of local cricket.
Right, Ian.
Certainly agree with the Hills, and Lords is the obvious answer. Just to be different though, I'll go for the Oval. Not the greatest view, but the food and facilities are even just on a par with Lords.
Robin.
I would go for Lords without a doubt. As an ordinary civilian who would have sat in the Compton and Edridge stand, what a pleasure it was to go into that press place actually and sit above it. As far as the local grounds are concerned, I just can't remember quite offhand which bar is nearest the press room actually, so I'll pass for the moment.
Who's the most underrated Irish cricketer you've ever seen play?
Yeah, I was trying to work out what that meant.
Yes.
I think in terms of the ones that I've actually got to play for Ireland, some people like Matt Dwyer now would be somebody who I think could have got a lot more opportunities and a lot more if he'd been picked a lot younger. I think he would have had an even more glittering career than he did have. Andre Both is also somebody that I was thinking of because, when people talk about the great team in 2007, they talk about the O'Briens and William and Owen and Trent Johnston, but Andre seems to get overlooked, and I think Andre was magnificent in that World Cup, and his performance in the game against Pakistan was one of the greatest bowling performances ever for Ireland. So he's somebody who gets a bit overlooked at times as well. In terms of people who didn't get to play for Ireland, I was going through a list of likely lads, and these days most people, because we play 40 games a season, most people who are on the radar do get a look in, but there's a few people who were missed over the years that might have been worth saying. People like Johnny Thompson, for example, somebody who saw him play in an Ireland A game in Malahide, and he got runs and he got wickets, and that was the last we ever saw of him. He never got to play for Ireland, so someone like that, I think.
Ian.
This was a quick fire round, Ger. John Anderson for me. Probably deserved a lot more Irish caps.
Yeah, here.
I have no doubt, to sound like a gramophone record, Andre Botha. His 8 overs, 5 runs, 2 wickets. And that tended to be overlooked. Everyone remembers O'Brien's 72 or 73 on the back of his shirt. Well done, Niall. But that was pivotal. And let's also not forget that with the bat, Andre, I think I'm right in saying to you statisticians that he shared with Owen Morgan in the highest ever batting partnership for Ireland, something like 360 against the UAE. So most understated player in my view, Andre Botha.
Who was the most effective bowler you've ever seen for Ireland men?
I suppose Andre fits that bill again. He was somebody who, on the right day, was magnificent. Jim Murtaugh's been somebody who's turned it on whenever we've needed them since. We've been lucky with a lot of good bowlers. Corlett was a fantastic bowler in his day as well. Yeah, I'll narrow it down to those 3.
Ian.
I'll put another name into the equation on his day, Boyd Rankin.
Fantastic. And Robin.
Tim Murtagh. I can still see him running in to bowl that first ball when Ireland played England at Lords. And by the way, could bat as well. For a number 11.
Test 50, that's right. Who was the most maybe this leads into the next question. Who was the most talented Irish batter you've seen for Ireland men?
Yeah, I suppose Tim Murtaugh's got to be up there as well. I don't think there's any competition. It's got to be Ed Joyce. He's been the best we've seen ever.
Paul Sterling.
Sterling?
Will be.
And Robin?
I'm tossing up between 2 left-handers, Ed and Owen. Owen gets mine.
Owen. Who is the most talented batter you've seen for Irish women?
I think Miriam Greeley. We've been lucky. We've seen a lot of good batswomen and batters in recent years. Claire Shillington, Cecilia Joyce. But I think Miriam Greeley was just something really special and played at a time when we didn't have the opportunities they do now.
Ian.
Don't think I saw Miriam, so I'm going for Claire Shillington.
Yeah, I'll echo Claire Shillington. Very steady.
Who was the most effective bowler you've ever seen for Irish women?
Yeah, I'm going to go back into the past for this one. I think she was named Cricket Ireland Women's Cricketer of the Hall of Fame last year. Was Susan Bray. She was a magnificent bowler. I was just looking at her figures. I mean, she never ever got hit. I think she went for more than 3 and over once in her entire career. And that was against England.
Goodness. And
she took buckets of wickets. She was really fast for her time. In recent years, Lucy O'Reilly's been somebody who's been very, very effective as well. But yeah, I think Susan Bray's got to go there.
I certainly didn't see Susan, so I'm going for Kim Garth.
Yes, I go for Kim as well, actually, but also give an honourable mention to Susan, whom I didn't see play, but the statistics would have her up there.
What was the best overseas tour or tournament you worked at, and why?
Gosh, hard to beat 2007, the World Cup. It was obviously a new thing for everybody. We were off on our first excitements, and to go to the West Indies as well is an amazing place. Great camaraderie among we had a huge media group as well. There's about 15 of us, I suppose. We got to see 3 or 4 countries. We went forward to the Super 8s. Lovely food and drink, and it was an amazing place. Really enjoyed that first tour, first World Cup.
Ian.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to be pretty boring and say the same. It's 3 weeks turned into 7. Ireland on the world stage the first time. It's one of those tours that'll never be beaten.
Robin.
Yeah, has to be 2007. One of the most harrowing days of my life.
That's a good story.
When we played Pakistan for a place which we ultimately got in the Super 8. And because of the time difference and because of a bit of rain, and my deadline for Sunday Life was 11 p.m. local Northern Ireland time. Goodness. And of course, the clock ticked on and ticked on. I had 3 intros written. One for an Ireland win, one for a Pakistani win, and one for a tie. Thank goodness I pressed the right button.
And speaking of cricket writing, I'm interested, what current or past cricket writer do you most admire for their work?
Gosh, I always buy the Times when Mike Atherton's column is due.
Mm-hmm.
He's fantastic. Gideon Haigh, is the Australian writer, is superb as well. They're certainly the 2 current ones that I read most. In the past, I suppose, I always thought John Arlett's writing was really underestimated. He was a man who was well known for his commentaries, obviously, and his comment on the game, but he was a brilliant writer as well. And he beats the pants off Neville Cardis and his overblown guff, to be honest, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, no, I think John Arlett's somebody that should be read more.
Right, Ian.
We seem to be spookingly similar there. Michael Atherton for me, but Paul Newman and Lawrence Booth at the Daily Mail are not far behind.
Robin.
Well, this is getting a bit boring, actually. I get the Times every day, can just about afford it, and Atherton is a must-read. As far as Arlott is concerned, we all know that Arlott, once upon a time, when he was a police constable, was a budding poet.
We're going to move into the mechanics of covering cricket from a journalist and broadcast perspective. Robin, you spent a few years as Irish Cricket Union's public relations officer in the early 2000s. What was that experience like, and how was cricket viewed by the Irish mainstream media at that time?
Well, a couple of the papers very good. Belfast Evening Telegraph and the Sunday papers, Sunday Life. not bad at all, and the newsletter, of course. So we were sort of blessed up here in Belfast with papers who always took an interest in the sport. But of course it was hard going, particularly with the broadcaster. Many times actually not on the back page, but on the inside back pages. It was a struggle, and maybe even a struggle today, but I think not so much today, obviously, because success breeds interest. And there's a marked difference, I would have imagined, in the press treatment of the Irish cricket scene post-2007. But before that, it was a bit of a hard going. When I was PRO, we had to engineer a few things, and the Irish Cricket Union, I remember, were very, very good in getting a first-class sponsorship from Tony O'Reilly to bring over the two Wall boys, Hansi Cronje and
John D. Rhodes. John D. Rhodes.
Well done. And that got us a fair amount of publicity, particularly Hansi Cronje. Hansi was very, very good with the media. And this, of course, a few years before his dreadful disgrace. And on the subject of Hansi, if I could say, the most difficult thing I've ever had to write in terms of cricket was when the late John Wright, that marvellous former secretary of the Irish Cricket Union, asked me to draft a bereavement letter to Hansi's widow after he had been killed in an air crash in South Africa. And given Hansi's latter years, it was a very difficult letter to write. But he was very good with the media, and the media liked him. Steve Waugh was very interesting because he actually, I think from memory, played 6 games for Ireland against Australia A, and the following year was to captain the Australian side in the World Cup. And there were people vying for places in the Australian A side for that game, so it was no picnic for him. I found Waugh the most fascinating man, who he drove everywhere. I don't drive, so my wife used to take me to his hotel, and Steve would drive us round up to Derry, to Warringstown, where he played for Ireland. And I remember in my first trip with him to Derry, he takes an avid interest in every country he plays. He was a patron of a leper colony in India, for example. He said to me, "Can you talk me through the troubles of Northern Ireland?" So I gave him the shortened version and started with the arrival of St. Patrick in the 5th century. But anyway, when we got to Derry, I was very pleased that I'd obviously given him a factual, as far as you can give him, the Irish situation, a factual account and a non-partisan one, because he said to me, "Are you a Protestant or a Catholic?"
Very good.
But it was a struggle, Craig, you know. I mean, you've taken over at a very good time, actually, when we've got test status and what have you. But in years gone by, it was a bit of a struggle, although the two other people I see on my screen were absolutely brilliant, actually, in keeping the game alive in those fallow years.
Okay, so we'll move on to Ian, the day-to-day and behind the scenes. I was going to ask you, you've covered a lot of, as I said earlier, you've been to 21 countries covering Irish cricket. What is it like, the challenges of travelling to cover tours and tournaments as a freelance journo?
Probably the biggest difference for freelance is that you have to apply for your own accreditation, arrange all your own travel and accommodation. In the good old days, you could stay in the same hotel as the team, travel on the team coach, but no, that's not encouraged. And these days, it's far too expensive to stay in the same hotel anyway. The players are fortunate to live it up in 5-star hotels these days. So the last couple of years, I've been using Airbnb, and I've found some gems, not just in Ireland, but around the world. The last was in Grenada, at the top of a steep hill, I remember. It was me in January there. It was my own place, but only a 15-minute walk from the ground. So that's perfect. Great Wi-Fi that's my biggest priority, obviously, when I'm looking for accommodation. As for mistakes, well, probably far more than I care to remember. The most recent, actually, I just remembered, was actually an Irish Cup game last season after the CIYMS Murrian game at Belmont. It had been rain delayed and wasn't over until 8:30, and I decided to stay in the scorebox and do a match report plus a roundup of the other games from there, just to make sure I met the deadline, which I think had been brought forward just in the previous week. So got all that done just before 10 o'clock, went to the gate. It was locked. I was locked in Belmont. So I had to make a couple of calls, find someone with a key. Remember the bar staff had to interrupt their Sunday night and travel. I think she came from Dundonald to open the gate and let me out. So there's another learning curve. Always make sure someone knows you're still on the ground, still working away.
And Joe, we talked about media facilities earlier, and you mentioned Lord's was the creme de la creme. But I'm sure all media facilities around the world are not quite Lord's standard. What are some of the mixed and varied facilities you've encountered over the years?
It's been some fairly ropey ones now, to be honest. Actually, yeah, Ian was talking about being locked into a ground. I almost had the opportunity to be locked into the ground with Ian once.
Oh, of course, yes.
The night of Kevin O'Brien's century against England, and we were both snowed under with work because people kept ringing us up looking for extra bits and bits. So I think we finished at 3:45 in the morning.
4:45, no, don't exaggerate.
4:45, sorry, it was 4:45 when we got back to the hotel.
Yeah.
But we had to walk all the way around the ground in the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bangalore. We finally found the exit gate. Ian, in his understated way, decides to push it as hard as he can, and it was one of these gates that swung open. Quite a big heavy gate. So it swings open, and in the dark we realised that it's about to hit a wall, but sitting on the bench on that wall were about 10 Indian soldiers, fully armed, okay, who were about to get the shock of their lives. So I've never moved as fast to stop the gate from crashing into them, which of course woke them up anyway, so they were fairly jumpy. But that was almost a disaster for us all. But it was actually that stadium that, although some things about it were really good, it had the foulest sanitary facilities I've ever seen. It was essentially a hole in the ground, and in a packed press box with plenty of food and drink being served all day long. It was not the nicest place in the world. So Bangalore, I'm afraid.
Bangalore. Definitely a feature of modern cricket is social media and Twitter. And Ian and Ger, both of you are quite renowned for being quick on Twitter with a fact or a stat. So pulling back the curtain a bit on that, I mean, how much research do you do before a match or a series? Or is this reams and reams of notebooks under the bed? Or is all these stats and facts and figures in your head?
Certainly not in my head. We have access, of course, to the excellent Cricket Europe website and their stats section. But I also keep my own. Every international player since Warwick and Jackson have their own page or pages in my files. I'm now on my 6th page, I think it is, for Kevin O'Brien, both sides, A4. So I record every match they've played with their batting, bowling analysis, cap number, match number. Well into my 2nd file at the minute for current players and those who've retired in the last year. So probably before every series, I look for notable landmarks. For example, just looking up there, Gary Wilson needs 41 runs to become the 5th person to score 6,000 for Ireland. Behind Porty, Sterling, Kevin and Niall, and Balbo needs 86 for 4,000. So I'll know they'll be coming up when they get playing again, hopefully. And then you subdivide into the category of the match. So there's Test records, ODI records, T20 records, So you get even more stats. Like Balbo needs 90 for 2,000 ODI runs. Boyd needs 4 for 100 ODI wickets for Ireland. So they're all waiting to be used when required.
Very good. Joe, what about you?
No, I'm not remotely as diligent as that. I suppose when you see, I have a lot of stuff in my head.
You do
Most
pick
of
out
it
a
is in
few
my
gems,
head.
though, Ger.
And
You do pick out a few gems.
yeah, I suppose you see something that might just turn up, or you say, you know, so and so. That's a very big partnership. I wonder what that's like in the international context, and you go off and you dig up Cricket Europe or Cricket Info and find out more about it, and then when it's about to happen, you just tweet it out to the world and see what they think. But yeah, I like the quirky stat. I like the interesting ones that tell a story, not just milestones or things that people pile up. I think when somebody does something a little bit weird, it's worth drawing attention to.
Definitely encourage people to jump on Ger and Ian's Twitter accounts for those. Another interesting aspect of covering cricket is you come into contact with a lot of opposition journalists from around the world. But is there much collegiality between visiting journalists and home journalists? When you travel, do you deal much, or do you interact much with the home journalists, or when they visit Ireland, vice versa?
Well, it's good to catch up with them. Obviously, when you meet, you get to know them. Obviously, when the two teams play against each other or during a global tournament, be the familiar faces. So, yeah, you get to know them. They know you. Media managers are also good to get to know because you want to access the opposition players. You know, it's Phil Spooner at West Indies is a good mate of mine. So, get on with him. Don't spend too much time with them post match, although. Ger probably remembers when the CWI was active. Always made a point of visiting journalists out for dinner, so there's some good nights with them.
Yeah, he makes the point about we used to bring out the visiting journalists sort of formally, and we had some good evenings with that. I suppose it's because we don't see each other very often. You know, Ireland might have only 6 or 8 games at home games a season or whatever these days. So it's generally when there's an international game, we just all go out together, and we see each other enough. Now there aren't that many people who travel here, and some are better than others for mixing. Like the Aussie guys are usually good to go out up for a night out. The English hacks usually hang around together, so we never really see them for a beer. But yeah, it's not a close shop at all. But we generally go and mix with each other because it's an away day for us, for most of us, wherever the game is.
My experience of foreign journalists has been absolutely excellent. And that relationship tends to have me sitting at home, editing a number of match programs. And so you have occasion to contact people like, I'm sure he's an old friend of yours, Malcolm Conn in Australia.
Yep.
When Ireland are playing Australia. I remember contacting Richie Beno for one of the programs and asked Mr. Beno if he would name his top Australian 11 since the end of the Second World War. You'll never believe who his 2 openers were, but that's a long debate. But I will tell you, one of his openers was Ricky Ponting, who'd never opened for Australia.
Right.
Yeah, the reason being that Bradman had to be number 3 and there were 4, 5, 6s and all of that. And but I found them most accommodating, the English journalists, Vic Marks and people like that. But just a footnote in Richie Beno, I said to him, can you let me have an address to which I can have a check sent to you? He said, why don't you send the check for the development of youth cricket in Ireland?
Fantastic. Yeah. And let's be honest, on occasion it's been known to rain here in Ireland. So what happens in the press box during rain delays, long rain delays? How do you pass the time? What do you generally do? Ian?
Oh, we complain about the press officer usually.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
Nah, I suppose we just talk cricket like everybody else does, and
Play poker.
You know, we swap a stat. Try and get out if we can. You know, run around the ground and meet people, because you don't really get a chance when you're watching a game all day. So if it's not too wet, you'll duck into the pavilion or the beer tent and catch up on your buddies.
Yeah, spend mostly on the laptop, probably catching up and stuff that you haven't had time to do. You expect to be at a cricket match for 8 hours and concentrating on every ball virtually. So it's sometimes it's nice to get a downtime, and also obviously trying to get info, and then the game will restart. So and also gives you more time to eat. So that's another bonus.
Poker skills.
I don't ever remember seeing poker playing at the press box.
I remember going to a CI match, actually. I wasn't reporting it, I was there to spectate, and the rains came down, and a few of the players, including, you call the New Zealander McMillan, Brian McMillan?
Yeah, Craig McMillan.
Oh, sorry, Craig McMillan. Well done. Just testing. Craig McMillan. And so we had a poker school. I'm delighted to say that Mr. McMillan is a far better batsman than he is a poker player.
And last question. How long did it take you to learn Duckworth Lewis and understand it?
I don't. I wait for the sheet to be given to me.
I think learning is a lifelong process. I haven't got around to it yet.
Okay, so we'll move on to another aspect of cricket and covering cricket. It's not just about international cricket. The domestic game is an important one for Ireland as well. Ian, we mentioned earlier that you cover more than just cricket, but even within cricket, it's not just those internationals. You also write about club cricket too. How do you find the time, and how many games do you get to a season, and how does that work?
Well, certainly not as many as when I started, literally just because of the amount of international and interprovincial cricket that's now in a normal season. I was just counting up. Last summer, I watched Ireland representative matches for 47 days. That was just the summer. But I still managed 40 club games, and that included at least 3 Saturday washouts. So they spent a lot of time, obviously. Club cricket's still very popular, actually. People still want to read about it, know the scores in the paper. Still a lot of parochialism around unions and people.
Yeah, Ger, one of the areas of club cricket you're self-confessed interest in is the Irish Senior Cup. What is it about that particular competition that interests you, and what are some of your favourite memories from the competition?
I just think it's a brilliant competition. I think that the fact that people get to mix and meet people from all over the country is such a great thing. The thing about the Irish Senior Cup was it arrived along at a time when there wasn't an awful lot of hands across the border stuff going on. It was 1982, which was a fairly nasty period in what was going on in the Troubles, and cricketers just came together, and it's been a fantastic competition. Just think the fact that you can get out and see other grounds and other unions and meet new people is a brilliant thing, and it solves that answers that question of who the best club side in Ireland is, and it's nearly always won by the best club side in Ireland. And there's a lot of really strong clubs out there, and that's the one they want to win. Yeah.
And Robin, you've watched Irish cricket and domestic Irish cricket evolve over the years, and what's your feelings on the importance of the domestic competition, say the men's interpros or the women's Super Threes?
Oh, hugely important, actually, and I think that the interpros are now very worthwhile. Interestingly, not least because a number of former county players are now finding their berth in the interprovincials. And that's a two-edged sword. I mean, I personally am saddened that opportunities are not as frequent and as in the past for Irish players to play in county cricket for reasons we're all aware of in the change of ECB regulations. But the bonus of that is that the boys are back in town as far as the men's game is concerned. And it's a very attractive proposition. I would not be as expert, if you like, on the women's Super 3, but from all that I read, That would be that's a very good initiative. And women's cricket looks to be actually in fair nick.
So move on to just your reflections on teams, eras, and players you've seen over the years and covered over the years from a broadcast and journalist perspective. Robin, if I put you on the spot, which era of Irish cricket to date have you seen which has given you the greatest joy to watch?
I think the Adrian Burrell period. I mean, Adrian took over as the national coach, A, from Mike Hendrick, and B, from Ken Livingstone.
Ken Rutherford.
No.
Oh my God.
Better edit that.
I told you it's called an 80-year-old's memory.
Livingstone.
We not qualified for a World Cup. I think we had tried on 3 occasions to qualify for a World Cup, didn't. So in comes Adrian. And I remember him vividly when I did an interview for the Sunday paper. I said, how are you going to approach this? He said, well, I'll tell you, he said, I don't expect to see a test ranking batsman immediately, nor do I expect to see a test ranking bowler in the immediate future. But I'll tell you what we can do. We can run between wickets and we can field. And that's what we're going for first and what have you. He was a marvellous motivator. He would put posters up in the dressing room before a game. We're their equals, we can beat them. That's sort of galvanizing. And he ultimately developed the squad. We had a terrific admiration for him, to the West Indies in 2007. And of course got to the Super 8. I think his last game was against Sri Lanka in Grenada. And I remember writing a story for Sunday Life, and it was a rather interesting story. He did not meet with the players for any length of time after that, his last game. He didn't make a speech. He handed them a letter. And when the team got back to their hotel, they opened up this marvelous letter of thanks from Adrian to them, quoting the inspiration that his father had been to him and how those players had now inspired him. And I think he was just a marvelous man. And that's the era I shall never forget.
Ger, as we said earlier, you wrote the book, or co-authored the book, The Top 100 Greats of Irish Cricket, and that came out in 2006. Mm-hmm. So if you were to rewrite that book in 2020, how many players do you think in the last 14 years would break into that top 100?
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Interesting one, that. Yeah. It obviously came out just before the first World Cup finals. So there were quite a few of those players were in it anyway. Johnson and the O'Briens and Bray. Since then, I think John Mooney would certainly be there. Mm-hmm. I think Balbirnie would certainly be there. Paul Sterling. George Dockrell. Jim Murtagh. But it's quite, yeah. That's a good question. Maybe we should look at producing a second edition.
Great idea. Great idea. The 2020.
Well, great cricketers in the past, though. So you need to do a lot to jock them off the list.
And Ian, as we mentioned earlier, you've watched 587 matches. What I'm curious about is how, after covering Irish cricket for so long and so many games, how do you not let the inner fan come out? How do you stay dispassionate about it and report on something and not have it influenced by your feelings about following Irish cricket?
How do you know I'm not a fan? No, I'm a fan, probably only in as much as it's easier to write about an Ireland win than an Ireland defeat. Players are always much more responsive in press conferences after a win than a defeat, and newspapers, certainly Irish newspapers, will always give more space to successful teams than losing teams. But give me a last over finish any day, and as long as it doesn't directly affect me, outside of the major tournaments, I can cope with an Irish defeat. But unlike watching Spurs, that's when I'm a real fan. So.
And Ger, you touched on 2011, and I believe there's some audio out there of you reporting back to RTE after Ireland beat England that day, and you might have had a little boo-boo.
No, I think the game you're talking about is the India game.
Oh, the India game,
which
was
was
it?
played 2 days after the time you beat England, and obviously when Ireland beat England, there was huge interest back home, and newspapers and radio shows that had never heard of cricket were suddenly becoming interested in it again. So I got a call to appear on the popular Sunday lunchtime chat show on RTE, hosted by Marion Finucane, who died earlier this winter. But anyway, Marion was hosting our show, and I got a call from a producer saying, "Will you come on the show on Sunday?" So I said, "Yeah, absolutely, no problem at all. Here's the time. You need to ring me, or whatever." Or sorry, they gave me a time. I said, "Look, there's a match going on at the time, but I'll find a room and we can do something." The match was Ireland and India, and I didn't realise how it was much louder it was going to be than it was for England. And by the time I got my phone call from RTE, I couldn't hear myself think. It was so loud. Eventually got a room at the back of the press box, but it didn't make much difference, to be honest. It was still inaudible. So I got on the air, couldn't hear a word from RTE, but decided just to wing it and told them what was going on in the game, and interspersed, well, Marion, Ireland are going well at the moment, and George Dockrell's just bowled Sachin Tendulkar, and well, Marion, after this game they go on and they play in Calcutta or wherever it was. So that's fine. 3 weeks later, I get home to Dublin and I meet people, and they say, "Yeah, I heard you on that radio show. Why did you keep calling Charlie Bird Marion?" RTE had obviously changed the presenter at the last minute or sometime, so I kept calling the very male Charlie Bird Marion. So there you go.
And Robin, you touched on this earlier. Thinking about all you've seen of the rise of Irish cricket over the years, your inner fan must have come out the day that, or the morning that Tim Murtagh ran in at Lord's. Where were you, and how did you feel that day?
Compton and Edridge stand with my 2 grandsons who are English, but they were rooting for Ireland. And when Tim ran in, I think it was a physical impossibility, but I think I achieved it. I think my hair stood on end and the goose pimples were aglow. It was the most remarkable occasion. And of course, we know what happened in that first innings. England bowled out for tuppence halfpenny. And I think that when we went for tea, we went under the scoreboard at that end. And I think at tea, but the statisticians will tell me if I'm right or wrong, Ireland were 40 odd ahead with 5 or 6 wickets in hand. And I just couldn't believe it. Mm-hmm. But of course, all good things must come to an end, so we'll not talk about the Ireland innings, or second innings in particular. But it was a remarkable match, including an overnight watchman called Leach getting a 90 odd, Yeah. It was unbelievable. And in fact, I remember going into the ground, and there was a BBC camera crew there, and they came up and asked me for a comment. And I think I remember saying, "This is the greatest day in Irish cricket history. We're at Lord's." And unforgettable.
Fantastic. And that's a perspective from outside the press box. What about inside the media centre, Ger and Ian? What are your memories of the morning at Lord's?
Yeah, well, the first ball, I decided to try and capture it. I take a picture of it. So I have a snap of behind the bowler's arm of Tim Murtagh just about to deliver. But it was fairly magic. It was very memorable. I think I said it to the guys on the morning of the first Test match in Malahide, that it was at times like that I think of the guys who aren't there anymore. And the Irish press corps are quite a collegiate bunch. We've all been knocking around together for years, and people like Sean Pender and Carl Johnston, former great Irish cricket journalists of the past, who just aren't there, who just didn't get a chance to see the glory days and things that they would never have dreamed of. And they worked as hard as any of us to keep cricket alive in the newspapers. So I gave a little bit of thought to them as well.
Yeah, it was the reaction of the English journalists. I probably remember most. You weren't the only ones watching in disbelief. Everyone was just so excited, couldn't really believe what was happening. Radio 4 actually got in touch with me for a lunchtime report on that first morning, so I was able to give a first-hand account of what happened to everybody up in the northwest, and it was absolutely incredible being able to get the chance to do that. And thank you, Tim Murdo.
Well, I think that question proves that the inner fan does come out occasionally, and even the best of journalists. Yeah. Okay, that's fantastic. Great memories and great insights behind the scenes on what it's like to cover Irish cricket. We're going to wrap up today's episode with a bit of a reflection from each of you on the cricket on the field has developed and evolved over the years and grown over the years, but what has been the impact of cricket's evolution in Ireland on what you do and what, in your days as a journalist, for better or for worse? Ger.
Gosh, it was well, for a while it was a lot easier to get stuff in. Even when I was sports editor in the Sunday Tribune for a long time, and I could decide what did get in, but I would never have overdone what cricket was worth, and I certainly found it much easier after 2007 to persuade people that there was a cricket story, and here's it was worth doing, and it's been pretty good over the last 10 years or so. But I suppose there are challenges. Things are more difficult to do. But there's obviously a lot more traveling now than there ever was to get around the world. You can't get to everything. I don't. I've got a full-time job, so I can't get away to every game like Ian does. But the players are pretty much the same as they ever were. They're harder to get to, of course. But I suppose when you know guys from the age of 11 or 12, they're generally going to talk to you a bit more than if you were just coming to them cold. So I think you put the work in when they're young and you get to know them as people. You've generally got a better chance to chat to them. But it's been an evolving process, and hopefully things will keep going for a while.
Ian, what's your observation?
Yeah, they'll certainly want more coverage on my 588th match than they did my first. Much more interested in Ireland versus England than Ireland versus MCC or the Free Foresters, which was what was going on when I started covering Ireland. And of course, it's happened much quicker than anyone expected. We only got associate status in '93, first ODI 2006. Test cricket wasn't even a dream at the start of the millennium, never mind when I first started watching 40 years ago. But after 2 World Cups, Oran Dutram gave his 2020 vision to be a full member. We get in after just 5 years, playing Test cricket by 2018. Unfortunately, we're not sure when the next Test match will be, but it's an exciting new era ahead and a great time to be an Irish cricketer.
And Robin, what about your perspective over the years?
Well, I no longer write, really. Sadly, maybe the odd obituary of dear people like Alfie and the late John Caldwell, one of the great architects of cricket development. So I now content myself with traveling the world with Torrance Tours. He is a marvelous organizer, is Roy. Hotelier, of course, about to open this Friday, he tells me, in Portrush.
He told us that on the Green Ball show as well.
Yeah, he has bored me to tears about it.
He asked me to stick an ad on the wall here, but I wouldn't.
I'm now getting my own back on him, you see. And but anyway, we travel a lot with Roy, who gets together, a group of maybe upwards of 20 of us, 25 of us. We saw the last games, of course, in Barbados and Grenada. We didn't go to St. Kitts. So that's what I content myself with. And I never tire of it. The group of players is always excellent and welcoming. And in fact, very briefly, after a game in Grenada, the 20-over game, having a drink with the team afterwards and having a drink with Paul Sterling. And I said, congratulations on a world record. And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you and Kevin put on whatever it was, 96 in the first 6 overs of a power play in 20-over cricket. That is a world record. Ah, he said, there you are. And he didn't know. I never tire of watching them and meeting them and having a decent chat with them.
Very good. That's a great note to finish on indeed. So we'll have to wrap it up there. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you to Robin.
Thank you very much indeed, Craig. It was good of you to ask us.
Thank you to Joe.
Thanks, Craig.
And thank you to Ian.
Cheers, Craig. Great fun. Thanks very much.
And thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the chat, and we'll be back soon with another episode of The Green Ball Show. Farewell.